So NAB is now coming to a close, and obviously the highlight of NAB in terms of cameras is Blackmagic dropping 3 different cameras, both for the high end, and then one, which is something that we've all been asking for, is a box style camera, and they finally delivered it with the Pyxis. However, leading into NAB as well as at the time of NAB as well, there has been a lot of negative feedback, both that I think are constructive criticisms, as well as some that are just a bit silly. And so today I want to just have an honest conversation so I can also help you all get better buying options on whether the Pyxis camera is the right camera for you. What's going on, everybody? My name is James Jackson. If you're new here, I do tips, tricks, news, and reviews for the film and video making industry. So if this is content that you like, definitely make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that bell so you can stay up to date on all the content going forth. All right, so let's talk about Pyxis. And this has been the talk of the interwebs, and it will continue to probably be the talk of the interwebs until it gets into the hands of creators as well as normal folks coming in June. And I also have my Blackmagic cinema camera, full frame camera right here, sort of discuss because there's a lot of things that's been given some feedback on, and I want to sort of address them, and I want to sort of tackle them head on. And I'm going to also be referencing the full frame cinema camera here. Now, I want to make this clear. I'm not trying to sit here and bash anybody, or as people saying that these are just haters. There's some people that have some complaints, and I do think there are legitimate complaints that I think should be addressed. But there are some that I feel like I don't know if you know what you actually wanted. And I wanted to basically just have an open dialogue and sort of just get some clarity to a couple things. So first, let's go ahead and address some of the ones that I feel are legitimate complaints. Number one is the lack of a HDMI port, or some people would say the lack of a secondary video port. And I think this is a legitimate concern or a legitimate complaint. I personally do as well agree that I really wish Blackmagic had created a second video source, particularly if it was HDMI, for people that are not used to going to SDI. But I think this is the first sign of where this camera is aimed for. This camera, as small and tiny as compact as it is, and especially at the price point that it's at, it's not really aimed for just your everyday shooters. This is made for people that actually do this professionally and actually get paid for it. And it's just another option that people can use, because SDI is a professional industry standard. If you're working with first ACs, they will always prefer SDI over HDMI, mainly because of the latency. HDMI is always going to lag compared to SDI, which is almost instant, and that really does help first ACs if they're pulling focus from a different area, and they got to be able to nail it on the spot. And also, it's much more secure. It doesn't have worry about dealing with any damage like HDMI. Like, I have had my HDMI ports damaged. Even full-size HDMI ports have gotten damaged. I haven't experienced that with an SDI port. So, but I understand that if they had offered both, or at least offered 2 SDIs like their Ursa Minis, I kind of wish that that was the case, because you always use it for your first AC has something, as well as then you have an out for your monitor that maybe you can wirelessly transmit to a client. However, I also feel like there is a solution that you can address this. It's not, I don't think anybody has developed it yet, and I was kind of hoping to keep this to myself, so maybe I could partner up with some people. But you know what, if you're watching this and you are able, or if you're someone that's an engineer that can design different things, here's a free one for you. Have someone design, given the fact that that right side is a modular design where anybody can build something and design something to it, someone can theoretically build an SDI, a dual SDI signal port that you can attach to that side, send the 12G SDI there, and then you can send 2 6G SDIs, which still will give you a 4K signal out. That way you can have 2 video sources as you wanted before. That is the viable solution. And we will get back to the SDI as well when we discuss some of the more sillier complaints that we have. The next thing we gotta talk about is the fact that Blackmagic also basically confirmed that this is the exact same sensor that is also in this guy, which is the Cinema Camera 6K. Some of the complaints that people have is the fact that it's not necessarily that great in low light, and it also has not great rolling shutter. And all of that is true, and I totally get why some people are looking at that, especially if you're looking at someone who's like comparing this to like a Komodo or a Komodo X, or even a V Raptor X. Totally get it, the fact that there is a lot of cameras that offer, you know, really fast rolling shutter speeds, as well as, you know, just having better low light performance. I can totally understand that complaint. Me personally, the low light capabilities is not that big of a deal. I have actually made videos on the low lights, and I've shown sample footage of the low lights. You can check it out right here, as well as in the description below. But I don't see it. I've never had a problem. I did a whole corporate where we were shooting in extreme low light conditions where it was just the stage, and I was able to get shots without any issues, mainly because I follow the fundamental rule of shooting low light in low ISOs. I don't crank up the ISOs. I instead find ways to get more light in, whether if it's me having a personal on light, or I open the iris up if I have fast glass, open the iris up. And that to me is the better option, because you're kind of getting diminishing returns when you shoot higher ISOs versus what you should be doing, which is in low light situations, you should be shooting at low ISOs. And quite honestly, and this is a personal thing for me, if you find yourself in a situation where you need to shoot 12,800 ISO, something is wrong. And you as a filmmaker, especially if you're someone who is more in the DP realm, that seems very, very odd, because lighting is all about control and being able to control, and you're putting yourself, it's the same thing with people that just like, we're just gonna go with the sun. It's like, you're kind of putting the control of what your ultimate output of what your image is gonna look like in the hands of things that is not in your control. And as a professional, that just isn't acceptable for me. So especially given the fact that lighting and lighting gear has gotten more and more and more accessible and cheaper, I don't see a reason to not be able to shoot in lower ISOs if you got lower light. All you need to do is just make sure you have light hitting the sensor. And in regards to the rolling shutter, we also need to remember that this is one of the benefits of Blackmagic, is that they control hardware, software, as well as the sensor. In this case, this is not their own sensor like the 12Ks. But one of the things that does apply is the fact that they do have in Resolve a gyroscope stabilization that takes the gyroscope of cameras like this and pretty much makes the rolling shutter an absolute non-factor anymore. So if rolling shutter is an issue, just use the gyro stabilization and it pretty much removes any of those issues for the most part. The only time that it doesn't is mainly if you're dealing with like fast cars and things like that. But if you're panning the camera, it will resolve that without any issue. The last one I really want to talk about is the lack of internal NDs. And yes, I totally agree and I totally understand. I really do wish that they were built-in NDs. Now, one of the things that I've been hearing a lot about, I don't think people truly understand, the mechanics in terms of building a camera with built-in NDs, because a lot of people bring up, well, the Pocket 6K Pro have built-in NDs. Why doesn't these cameras? You got to keep in mind that they're working with a very different mount system for both the Pyxis as well as this camera, which is the cinema camera. L-mounts for right now has yet to be proven that a camera with using that mount can actually have built-in NDs in it. Now, E-mount has proven to do that. Canon has been proven to do that with the RF mounts. That has yet to be seen with a L-mount camera. So, and also you gotta agree with people that keep up bringing up the Pocket 6K Pro with its built-in NDs. That was using a very big snoot where it was relatively easy to hide the NDs and pull it out from before, where that's not necessarily the case with how they designed the mount for this camera. Now, could they have maybe designed it a little better to where they could put NDs in it? Sure. But my guess is the fact that they felt they already had sort of a design for the cinema camera, and they kind of wanted to just transition that over. So, but I think that is a legitimate complaint, that it's like, kind of wish that there was built-in NDs. However, this seems to be also relatively easy to solve, especially if you get the L mounts, where you can get, for both EF and PL, you can get like the Pacos or something like the Pyxis, where they have drop-in ND filters you can throw in there and your problems will be solved. You can also get something like I have, which is the Tilta Mirage matte box, where you can put a variable ND filter on it and the problem is essentially solved. And one of the great things about both the Pyxis as well as the cinema camera is the fact that you are able to still get relatively clean blacks with a variable ND filter, because the OLPF on both this camera and the Pyxis is amazing. And it doesn't require doesn't have much of that magenta shift compared to something like other cameras that have built-in NDs. You know, $25,000 cameras that have built-in NDs that don't have the cleanest IR filters. And I'll just leave it at that. All right, now I want to sort of address some of the more silly and flat out ridiculous complaints about this camera. The number one thing I wanted to first talk about is the screen on the side. Now, I want to say I do hear you, in sort of like, you kind of wish that it was sort of a system that could be better suited, but given the fact that if you're looking at the design of the camera, you can see that the top part is really designed to be a heat sink, so it basically allows heat to dissipate through the top. It makes sense to not try to cover that up with a screen, and it also lessens the mounting options that you may have. The side is what seems to be the best option, given that it is a box style camera. However, I think people are blowing this complaint way out of proportions. Number one, if you're doing an interview style, this is actually a much more viable option, because you can have the camera on sticks, you can be right by there, and you can be talking to your subject while still looking at the image. So for interviews and for corporate gigs, this is actually a really, really cool option to do. But to me, the biggest complaint is the fact that it's like, oh, you don't get a usable or a viable screen. And I just like, do you all really understand what a box camera is? And I bring all this up because it seems like these are people that are used to cameras that just have everything go, like mirrorless cameras or DSLR cameras that have everything sort of set. And I don't think you guys understand what box camera means. Box camera, by design, is that it's supposed to be modular. You're supposed to build it how it sees to you. It's not supposed to be like out of the box ready. Go through the history of box cameras, and none of them, there's only a very, very select few. Now, let's look at full frame cameras, just full frame cameras, because this is a full frame camera. Let's look at full frame cameras that are box style cameras that have everything right out of the box. Well, first of all, that eliminates all the Kinefinity cameras, because number one, let's go with the Mavo LF. You know, that camera you get for, yes, it's technically $6,000, but really that $6,000 doesn't even get you a mount. You have to pay anywhere between $200 to all the way up to maybe $500 just to purchase a mount, and that's individually. So your numbers can rack up really, really quickly. Then you got to buy the Kinefinity. That doesn't necessarily come with it for that $6,000. So you gotta buy the Kinefinity as well, which means you have to, which anywhere, and the 7-inch one, I believe, is about $1,000 for that one. So you gotta buy $1,000, and I think it's like $600 for the 5-inch one. So there's more money to be added. For the cage that has the battery option that you can do for hot swapping, which I do recommend you do that, just given the fact of how much power draw this thing has, that right there is another like $1,000. I think that's another $1,000 right there as well, not including the batteries. So you see this all stuff added up, and I mean, let's look at the Red V Raptor. The Red V Raptor is what, $20,000, and that's just for the box. So now you have to buy the monitor, you have to buy the proper batteries for it. You got to get cages that will rig up for that was designed for it. So none of these box cameras come out. Even stuff that are sort of more like, let's say the FX6, it's not really a box style, it's more of an ENG style camera. But let's even look at that in terms of just a monitor. I don't know anybody who shoots professionally with the FX6 that uses that monitor and that monitor that comes with it only. Because I've shot with that camera, and that monitor sucks. I'm sorry, it sucks. It's not a great monitor. So by design, you're going to have to get an external monitor, even for those that have monitors like that. To me, the only one that has actually came close to having like everything ready to go from a full frame box style camera, there's only two that have actually came to mind that I've ever seen. Number one is the Zcam F6 Pro. And that one came with a monitor, but even then, you still need additional accessories. Like you need the proprietary media port that you need in order to use it. The last one is the C500 Mark II, which does come with everything. You just need to buy media, but the battery that comes with it won't last you very long. I think it's a BPA 30, which may last you like 40 minutes. So you're gonna have to buy additional batteries, and you gotta get the big BPA 60s, or you're gonna go with the V-mount, or you may have to buy the extension and get that V-mount option. And even with that monitor, it's decent, but even then, you would still have to get a secondary monitor as well. So I really fail to understand why is this such a complaint when the fact that every other box style camera that I know about, you need outside of, again, the Zcam F6 Pro. But if you look at the traditional Zcam F6, or the BS1H is another one. If you look at all these other box style cameras, none of them have a ready to go system. They're box styles, they're designed to be built. So this idea of the monitor being such a big complaint, it's just flat out stupid in my mind. And I'm sorry, for those that are complaining about this system, that's like, oh, I just want a ready to go. I'm like, then you don't want a box style camera. You want a mirrorless camera. Maybe you want something like the cinema camera 6K, where just like this right now, I can go and shoot. It won't last long, but I can go and shoot just with this camera if I desire to do so. This is a post-shoot update coming from the future. I realized there was a part that I forgot to mention on the sillier side of complaints, and that was the fact of the lack of ProRes. Now I get why people are asking for ProRes, because I totally understand that there's some clients that are maybe not necessarily used to Blackmagic RAW, so having an option to shoot ProRes or shoot some other codec that's a little bit more usable, that's more widely known, would be something that I think a lot of people ask for. However, I say it's silly because there's so many options to resolve that very issue. You have two companies, both Atomos and Blackmagic themselves, make monitors. It's going back to the monitor situation. Blackmagic makes monitors that allow you to shoot ProRes. And given the fact that you have a 12G SDI, you can, unlike this guy right here, which only sends a 1080 signal out of the HDMI, the Pyxis will be able to send out 4K 60 out to the SDI without any issues. And again, it's a locking system, it's a more reliable system. So, and the video assist actually has SDI connection ports, both the 5-inch, though that one is a mini SDI, you just need to get an adapter, it's no big deal, or the 7-inch, which has a full-size SDI. You can use either one of those and you'll be able to mount it to the camera, and you will be able to shoot and get your ProRes recording options that you could just hand off to your client. So that's why I say The ProRes option is not really a big deal because and you can either go Atomos with their Ultra or their Shogun, and you'll be able to record ProRes to SSDs. There's a variety of options to solve this problem. Again, this is a boxed out camera. You're supposed to build it out. Now let's address the final complaint that I feel has been silly and stupid from the beginning, and that is the dynamic range. And the complaint that, oh my God, it has terrible dynamic range. If you've ever, again, I have the cinema camera 6K right here. I have done tons of content. I've shot corporate videos, I've shot podcasts, I've shot short films, I've shot little passion project commercials with this camera, and I'm also done promo videos. And you know, depending on if the Pyxis arrives in time or not, I may actually use this for a full-length documentary feature that I'm using. The idea that the dynamic range sucks is just absolutely, there's people that have actually never shot with the sensor that's in this camera or the Pyxis, because the dynamic range is good. It has really good dynamic range. Anybody that has said that hasn't really shot it or doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. I've done videos on the dynamic range of this camera, and I've compared it to what I think is the best performing dynamic range camera for under 10 grand, which is the Canon C70. And you can take a look at that video right up here as well. And look, does it have the same amount of dynamic range as the C70? No, it doesn't. But it's not that far off. It's not that far off that you can't make it match. In fact, I match these cameras all the time, and I shoot in situations where I do see the window and I do expose for the window, and I never have any issues with it. So the idea that saying that this dynamic range sucks because they're not shouting 15, 16, 17, 18 stops of dynamic range. I'll tell you right now, most of the cameras that tout 16, 17 stops, they don't really shoot that high amount of dynamic range. And also, Blackmagic is very conservative about the number that they put out for their dynamic range. Very much similar to Arri. They'll tell you a number, but it actually could probably perform better than that. For me, it's just like, I've already talked about and I've talked about this before. I made a video about why this whole thing about dynamic range and people complain about dynamic range, and why I've said dynamic range is overrated. It is overrated in the way we talk about dynamic range is not proper. I've made a video about it, check it up right here. But to me, it's like, all I care about is, do I clip my blacks, do I clip my whites, and what does it look like going into the shadows, and what does it look like going into the highlights? And when you're shooting at 800 ISO, I know they say 400 is the native ISO for both this and the Pyxis. I don't buy that. 800 to me has always been the best performing ISO. When you shoot at that, it has a great roll off into the highlights, and the noise is there, but it's very film grain like. So it's very easy to clean up and get an additional 2 stops in the noise floor in that performance. So to me, this whole thing is just stupid, and people don't really know what they're talking about. They just see a number and they just like, oh, this camera sucks. The image quality is some of the best that I've ever seen. And I actually love the image that comes out of this camera more so than even my Canon C70. I want to go out and shoot because I love the image, the colors that pop out of this, the way this renders skin. It's very organic, very film-like. I think this is Blackmagic's best image. I'll even say, and again, I haven't touched the Ursa Cine 12K, but comparing, this to their previous 12Ks, and the fact that the Pyxis has the same exact sensor as this camera, I think this image is better than the Ursa 12Ks. Me personally. I know a lot of people are going to disagree again with the rolling shutter, and you got the faster readout speeds, and you got higher frame rates. If those are the things that you need for your work, I totally get it. Didn't go for cameras like that. But just purely on an image quality, like just how skin was, how the colors come out, I love the image out of this camera. And the talk about the weak dynamic range is just flat out stupid. And people really have no idea what they're talking about. They just hear numbers. And dynamic range is more than just the numbers. It's about how does the camera behave, rolling off into the highlights, rolling into the shadows. And what basically, even if it's at 13 stops of dynamic range, you are getting smooth roll off into the highlights. You can easily clean up the shadows with even when there's noise there. It's a very easy thing to clean up. And the more important thing is, again, lights are so inexpensive. If you having trouble getting things right there, just shooting high dynamic range, get some lights and throw some lights. Light your scenes. It's not really that hard. So I don't know why we're having this conversation. Anyways, these are my thoughts on the camera. I would love to know what you guys think. Let me know. Leave your comments below. And as always, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And until next time, take care, everyone.